Stratford upon Avon is a market town in Warwickshire. It's about 2.5 hours northwest of London. It has a history spanning 800 years, however its most famous citizen, William Shakespeare, died 408 years ago. The Gower Memorial is a multi-sculpture featuring Shakespeare surrounded by Hamlet, representing philosophy, Prince Hal, history, Lady Macbeth, tragedy, and Falstaff, comedy. Shakespeare was born in 1564 and died on his 52nd birthday due to a fever that he caught from excessive drinking. I can totally understand this. There's definitely been times I've felt like death after too much happy juice. At the time, the average age expectancy was only 30. Shakespeare was lucky to survive his childhood. Within a few weeks of his birth, Stratford upon Avon was struck by an outbreak of the plague, with 238 deaths out of a population of 800. Shakespeare wrote 39 plays split between comedies, tragedies and histories. Comedies tend to have happy endings, tragedies sad endings, and histories are about real people that existed, such as Julius Caesar and Henry V. He invented hundreds of words and phrases, including loads we still use today, such as break the ice, as luck would have it, cruel to be kind, green-eyed monster, and the world is my oyster. The town is situated on the River Avon, with the word Avon meaning river in Welsh, so its translated name is actually River. Shakespeare was both baptised and buried here. Unfortunately, it was closed when I visited, however it's free to enter. The sanctuary knocker on the inner porch door dates from the 1200s. Anyone touching this could claim sanctuary for 37 days.
The Lord of the Manor, and somebody's been poaching, stealing deer from my deer park. I don't know who it is, but I think it's you, sir. You look like a deer poacher, and you come from a long line of deer poachers, it has to be said. So you're guilty, and that's not really a fair and just system, is it? So now we have a jury system. We have 6 men good and true over here, and we have 6 men good and true. Someone's dropped off, he's heard my stories too often. Noticeable absence of women. It wasn't until 1920, I believe, that we had the first women sitting on our juries in this country, and I bet we were one of the first, like maybe somebody before us. But at least it's better than me as the Lord of the Manor. And the illustrators thought, apart from a couple of women in the public gallery, we're a bit light on women. We'll make the defendant a woman. Number 1 is the bailiff. He's the judge, obviously, but he's also the mayor of the town, because they won't call the mayors of Stratford until the 18th century. Now, you might not be able to see that. 1568, William Shakespeare's father, John, was the bailiff. So he was born around about 1530, so he's in his late 30s here, and he's dispensing justice. Now, John actually had a number of positions, this being the most senior, but he was also an alderman, who was constable, so law and order. He was chamberlain, so looking after the finances. You know, the best job he had was when he was in his 20s. I don't know why I gave this one up. He was chief ale tester. So he'd go around every pub testing the ale, make sure it hadn't been watered down, etc. And William was born in 1564, so he would have been about 4 or 5 when his father's dispensing justice. So I love the fact that we're a bit of artistic license. There's young William. And being young William, he's most probably shouting, "Hanger, Dan, hanger!" knowing full well that he doesn't have the authority. Right, let's go through here. I also said that you guys, this building was built with oak from the Forest of Arden in a sort of IKEA-style fashion. It's all numbered. So there's the number 4. So quite remarkably, John the Baptist's head is the clearest, and was only discovered in about 2015. I think the Conservative needed very large scotch after the shock of that. St. John the Evangelist, God the Father, the Holy Spirit actually, and Christ the Son. You can see God the Father's right hand, the Virgin Mary, the coat of arms, the Plantagenets, and the coat of arms. This was the school library until as recently as 2015, and back in the 1970s it was just covered with a plate of glass to protect it, but you could see all of this, and when the librarian wasn't looking, the boys, because they used fountain pens with ink, they would get ink on a ruler and they would flick it at this, and if you hit the right hand of God the Father, you got 50 points.
Over to your master.
Birching Day, yes indeed. Fridays, what day is today?
Friday.
Is it? The honesty of your spokesperson is clear to you. Good, yes indeed. In Shakespeare's time, what did fathers, who basically ruled everything, what did fathers want for their daughters more than an education? More than anything else?
A good marriage.
A good marriage. Define a good marriage in a father's eyes.
What?
Yes. But simply, yes, lucrative. From the birth of a baby girl, it's like, a baby boy is born in the next street. Get these 2 cribs together. I think they are fond of each other, yes indeed. There is land to be made, arms to be shared. And so, yes, so not illegal, but mercenary and misogynistic, to say the least. So a girl's education would finish about 7 years old. You'd be able to count, you'd be able to read. So, all boys. This school was free. The father paid no fee. And there were a few women, female guild members, had to be members of the guild to be trained. This was a bit like, not Masonic, but it was kind of like a sort of workers' association, a sort of guild, a kind of like cooperative. And a leading light was his father John, who, do you know what his father made? Gloves, very fine gloves, very purchased by the Queen, gave him her business, with what better endorsement than royal favouritism. I am the Queen and I buy John Shakespeare's gloves, and they do indeed fit me like a glove. Thanks, Madge. Yes, so, have there been out? This is the opportunity for someone like William to come to this school and receive a classical education. And the masters Thomas Jenkins and Simon Hunt had been teaching these subjects, same subjects, to totally different children. One has to use the word class. You may have noticed in England we have a class system, and we always will. So in those days, yes, so these boys lower down the rung, lower down the ladder, but the same subject. So these were new, a bit experimental. In many ways, these boys were like guinea pigs to see if this works, you know. It'll go over their heads, won't it? Some of these children, they can barely speak English, never mind Latin. They were here 5.5 days a week, and on Saturdays they would, in the morning, study the Bible. Shakespeare studied the Bible. Far from being the decadent, irreverent poet that he was, as the man who, you know, religion was part of his life. I cannot say who can, whether he was a true believer. His father, as you know, was leaning towards Catholicism. Not wise. At the time, the Queen, Elizabeth I, thought there was a plot against a Catholic plot, which is why in 1587 she, our monarch, who liked theatre and gaiety and was quite witty and intelligent, childless but witty and intelligent, had Mary Queen of Scots put to death. A modern monarch, can you imagine? King Charles putting someone to death? You know, the last Queen, Philip possibly, but yes, exactly. No. There'd be questions in Parliament. There'd be a nationwide uproar. Or would there? One does wonder. Think about the British, the English in particular. We like change, we like it slowly. So, girls in schools, slowly. Look at the board at the back there, King Edward VI here. In many ways, I'm ashamed to admit this. 2014, girls were finally allowed in. Because they aren't allowed on the stage either. So the first actors William Shakespeare saw were all men playing women. Not a lot of female parts in plays at the time. And if you were in a theatre company, as a boy, you would play the female parts because your voice was of a lower register. William, the law, of all things, of all subjects, had he continued with it, and again, when he applies the law, the law in his plays is often corrupt. It's often measure for measure. It's often measure to Venice. It's laws. I can't think of a king in his plays who does anything good. It was tyrannical and for what he knew about. Because this is a time in English history when to even mention Henry VIII, and to God forbid mention what he did to 5 of his wives, was, sir, that is scurrilous, sir, that is evil, sir, you shall be banished from this village, sir. It's all very, so boys' education in terms of English history is non-existent, but they have inquiring minds, so it's kind of off limits. The master would have had orders not to teach that. Therefore, Roman and Greek history is applied in spades. One of the first books Shakespeare read here, they read it to class, Plutarch. Marvellous book, still one of the best books ever written about Roman and Greek history. Violent, turbulent, incestuous, horrible. Bearing in mind they're reading about Caligula and his sister. Yes, indeed. Dad, what's incense? What are they teaching you in there? You know, it's all part of the curriculum. He finds out things about Julius Caesar, which he later uses in his play about the assassination of Caesar. Do you know what Caesar suffered from? Don't say stabbing. Epilepsy. It is the falling sickness. A man of such power would have fascinated William. You know, I thought he was all powerful. He had this awful, debilitating disease that. But the Romans know what the hell it was. It looks like demonic possession. You're frothing at the mouth. Therefore, he had his 200-strong Praetorian guard always with him. They would protect him and stare out the Senate. They wouldn't even dare to think that Caesar had the falling sickness. And in the play, Cassius says to Brutus, he had the falling sickness. But it's said away from prying ears and prying eyes. Cassius needs to know when Caesar is alone so he can kill him. And also, why does he ask Brutus? Because in Plutarch, it tells you that Brutus was favoured to be Caesar's son, illegitimately. You know, these Romans put it about a bit. So he's fond upon it, so he asks him. And when Caesar's finally stabbed, who's the last person to stab him in Shakespeare's version? Et tu, brute. He never finished here. His father lost his position downstairs as mayor, literally came in and found someone else sitting in his chair. Did you not get the email, John? We meant to tell you. Sorry, you're out. He said something like, well, because he was quite a foul-mouthed man, and he was shunned by the Stratford community. The reason I mention it is it affected William, because William couldn't finish. His father wasn't going to church. And the only concept of how religious his time was, he believed in him. And even if you didn't, you pretended to. James I gets on the throne. You know what happens then, don't you? Witch burning. Do you think Shakespeare ever saw witch burning? Never talks about it. I think so. One of the sonnets actually. But what does he write a play about? A certain Scotsman who sees witches. Yeah. Who went to the first night of it? James I, who believed in witches. And we have, in 1603, when she passes on, the only appointed monarch in England, the only one who was given position, a Scot. We do moan and engage these days in arguments with Scotland about devolution and independence. We tend to forget we were once ruled by a Scot, who nobody could understand, who brought with him his equally incomprehensible retinue. Fascinating times. A king who went to bed with his sword, allegedly, a very paranoid man. So his reaction to Macbeth was silent. That's significant. That Anne Hathaway had the gall to smuggle herself in here. Her brother came here, and she was envious and sort of vocal about her resentment of his luck and his entitlement. And the master had no idea. In Shakespeare's plays, have you noticed, women pretend to be men, and men haven't a bloody idea what they're doing. I mean, surely Orsino would suss, wouldn't he? What? I mean, you know, they don't know. And of course, Portia, Merchant of Venice, comes into they all think, you know, it's how dumb were men in those days. But was that based on the fact that the master had no idea? Is that your brother, Hathaway? That's my other brother. He's been away. Yeah, probably good. Jenkinson. I had no idea. I think that's why actually Simon Hunt lost his job. They found out, and because cross-dressing was against the law. Did you know? And again in Shakespeare's plays, Viola and Portia are not punished, are they? Orsino never says, by the way, you pretended to be a boy. That's fine, because he loves her. And Portia is rewarded. She's rewarded with Shylock's dismissal and his some say comeuppance, some say persecution.
The actual room before it became the Georgian schoolroom was used for entertainment and feasting. In the medieval days, you would have had the priests and the merchants and the guild members celebrating every holiday up here. They ate and drank very well. They had kitchens up here. They would have hauled sides of venison, any kind of game. They ate very, very well. Performances were put on here of plays in Shakespeare's time. William Shakespeare's father, you've heard about John Shakespeare, very interesting man indeed. When he was mayor, he would have sat in this chair and watched performances of the London play companies that would have toured the country, sometimes just for the pleasure of touring, but a lot of times, if there was plague in London, the acting companies came out and toured the country to make money. And they would have toured all these medieval towns, gone to all these guild halls to perform once in front of the incumbent mayor. Don't forget, in the Tudor period, as in any other, very volatile. We changed from Catholic to Protestant, and Elizabeth was, desperately trying to control the population and also be seen as a fair ruler, but she did not want any problems from her. The undercurrent left over from the Catholic era. So every mayor's job was to watch these plays as these courtiers came to town with their plays, to listen to any criticism of the crown. And once he was satisfied, he would grant them a license, and then they would be able to perform in this building and other areas around the town. In 1736, for instance, we had about 40 boys in the school. at school here, Georgia, of course, and there was a massive outbreak of smallpox, and 37 of those boys died, and only 3 survived. They were isolated behind this partition by some very kind and generous person who looked after them.
The house was owned by Shakespeare's father, and by the time William inherited it, he had moved to a larger premise. He therefore rented a portion out to his sister and the rest to another tenant, who turned it into a pub. In 1846 the whole building was put up for sale, and P.T. Barnum tried to buy it so that he could dismantle it and rebuild it in New York. However, this was blocked by a consortium including Dickens and Queen Victoria's husband Albert. Let's finish with a few words from the bard. To be or not to be a subscriber, for that is the question. However, if you aren't, you might miss out on some videos. A bike, my kingdom for a bike, is what Richard III would have said if he was born today. Ribble, ribble, wherefore art thou, Ribble, is what I hope you say every Sunday just before the next video is released. Thank you and have a great week.